Welcome, everyone. Today we'll be doing the webinar on Your Inbox is for Sale. It's business email compromise. Before we start, I'm just going to give a quick introduction to myself. I'm Amber Maida. I do the marketing for cybersecurity, and I'll be your host for today. We have Mike Jafrita, who will be your moderator. So I'm just going to give you some quick information. I'll be monitoring the chat. And if you have any questions afterwards, it will be me that will be responding. Get my mouse to go over there. Before we start, I just want to give you a quick background on cybersecurity. We work in the SMB space and with nonprofits in the Northeast area. We're dedicated to protecting you from cyber threats, securing your organization with our IT support, and also helping you comply with the latest cybersecurity regulatory requirements. We are out of Fairfield, Connecticut. And of course, it is the infamous Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. We are big Star Wars fans here at Cybersecurity. Lynn Souza actually founded Cybersecurity and named it after the kyber crystals that do the energy within the lightsabers. So we're big Star Wars fans here, so we wanted to celebrate with you by doing this webinar. Before we start, for those of you that have followed along with us in the last month or so, we've been having a behind the scenes cyber threat bracket showdown. So we have our internal threats on the left and our external threats on the right. Internal threats are primarily ones that are caused by an employee error, human error. And external threats are things that you don't really have any control over, such as hackers or outside people in your organization. So we're down to our last two threats. We have the malware download and we have our compromised credentials on the dark web. So post your vote in the chat and we'll announce what the winning threat is at the end, as well as we're going to give away a $50 gift card to Amazon so you can buy your favorite Star Wars souvenir to celebrate the day or whatever you want to use for it. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you to today's moderator, who is Michael Jafrita. I'll let Michael introduce himself, but I'm going to hand it off and I'll see you guys in a bit.
Great. Thanks, Amber. I'm Mike Jafrita, president of Cybersecurity. Work with small, medium-sized organizations, both for-profit and non-for-profits every day, trying to help them find ways to better use technology to achieve their organizational goals, as well as secure their organizations from all of the nefarious activity that's happening out there with regard to cyber threats. I'm excited to be here today to talk about business email compromise. We've got a great set of panelists who I'll introduce in a few moments. But before I do that, I'd just like to talk a little bit about business email compromise to be able to set the stage.
So Mike's going to cover the first common 3 most asked questions that we've had leading up to the webinar before we introduce our panelists. Just wanted to pop in and say that.
Thanks, Amber. Amber's there to keep me on track all the time. Sometimes I get off on my... So business email compromise. This is a highly effective attack method for hackers today who are trying to achieve some sort of entry into an organization and as such find ways to exfiltrate their data, intercept their financial transactions, and lead to general bedlam within organizations. Generally, the way it works is that a hacker will find a way to get into your email, either through sending you some sort of a phishing email that asks you to log into your Office 365 account to verify something or to strengthen your security. When you go to log in, you put in your credentials and it doesn't work the first time. And really what's happened there is that they've captured your credentials, but then they redirect you to the actual Microsoft login page, where miraculously, when you try again, you'll be able to log in. At that point, it's not like in the movies where the screen jumps up and says, you've been hacked. Really what's happened there is they've collected your credentials so they can log in as you to your business email and then be able to scour for information that could be useful to them. It could be looking at the data that's in your email box. It could be to try to escalate the privilege that they've gotten to administrator level within your Office 365. It might be to create a forwarding rule in your email box so that every email that comes in gets forwarded to them, and they can just sit there and watch for the juicy email to come through that might contain some good data or potentially a financial transaction, some sort of a wire transfer or something like that. They then will get in the middle of that conversation between you and the person on the other end and be able to create some problem like redirecting the wire transfer or collecting the data that was intended for someone else. This type of attack has become very, very common. As a matter of fact, it is now one of the most damaging types of attacks from a financial standpoint that small businesses deal with. You can see this chart that Amber is showing here shows that business email compromise has cost organizations 30% of all the losses that they've had from different types of risks over the course of the last year. And that's $1.8 billion in cost to small and medium-sized businesses with a B. And you can see that other common attacks that you hear a lot about, such as ransomware is only at 29 million or malware being at just under 7 million. This is just revolutions larger than that in the realm of cost and damage to organizations. It is growing very, very quickly, and unfortunately doesn't get some of the press that some of those other types of attacks like ransomware attacks get. But for small, medium-sized organizations, it's often low-hanging fruit. And so an attacker can go through and compromise a whole bunch of different types of organizations, set up a forwarding rule, and just sit there and wait for something good to come through so that they can go and reap the rewards that they're hoping for, even if it takes culminating several different organizations worth of information to make the type of bounty that they could get if they went to one larger organization. So how does this happen? I described briefly that one of the ways is that somebody could socially engineer you to be able to get your email credentials. Credentials could be lost on the dark web. And so if your credentials are for sale on the dark web, you might they might be able to get into your email box. There's really any threat vector that they can utilize to be able to access your email and then pose as you so that they can either send emails as you to be able to gain confidence. So for example, if you're the CEO of an organization, they might then try to send emails to your CFO or your controller of the organization to try to get funds diverted. But the confidence example and other types of login examples are very, very common throughout small and medium-sized organizations. They happen every day. So with that, I'll stop talking because that's not why anybody's here. They're here to hear from these three very knowledgeable folks out in the world today. Our first panelist, Bob Thomas, is the CISO of cybersecurity and works with us and our customers every day around securing organizations. Dave Riccardi is CEO of Proximo, has actually experienced a business email compromise, and so you'll get a perspective from that standpoint. And Fred Scholl is the head of the cybersecurity program at Quinnipiac and has vast knowledge around how business email compromise affects those in the world at large. So maybe each of you could do your 30-second intro, the things you find that might be useful to this conversation. Let's just go from left to right. Bob?
Sure. Hi, I'm Bob Thomas. As Mike said, I'm one of the principals at cybersecurity. I've been involved probably through all phases of our organization, from sales and solution architecting, and now that we're so focused on also protecting small to mid-sized business, we absolutely want to be able to protect those folks. And while we're doing so, we consider it our responsibility to be able to not just put tools in place, but be able to live monitor. And I think that's one of the differences that we make.
Great. Thanks, Bob. David?
Yep. Hi, I'm David Ricciardi. I'm President and CEO of Proximo, and we are a small, mid-sized business, as Mike was talking about. And everything that we do at Proximo is around data and analytics. So we deal with a lot of data from our customers and turn it into something that we like to call intelligent information. The reason I kind of tell you that is me and my team, we're not tech unsavvy people. We are not cybersecurity specialists, but kind of looking back, and we'll get into some of this story as we go along. But we're kind of like I think one of those examples of it can happen to anybody, and so that's where I'll kind of leave it right now. But we'll talk a little bit more about this during the next 45 minutes.
Thanks, David. And Fred?
All right, yeah, it just took me a second to unmute myself. Thanks, Mike. So I'm Fred Scholl. As Mike said, I'm the director of Quinnipiac's Masters in Cybersecurity program. It's an online degree program. It's taught by practitioners for practitioners, but we're, and me personally, are very interested in educating pretty much everybody, users, about the risks and solutions for cybersecurity. And I was interested in being in this panel because BEC is such a high risk area, as Mike indicated, and so happy to be here and share my thoughts on this.
Great. Thanks, Fred. So with that, let's just jump right into this. We're going to structure this conversation so we're walking through the sequence of events that happens from before an attack, during attack, after attack, and just get some different perspectives on how that looks, feels, and tastes to those surrounding them and involved in them. So, David, I'd like to start with you and just ask, on the happy day where the birds were singing and the butterflies were going around, the day before you recognized there was an attack happening, what kinds of thoughts did you have in your organization around cybersecurity? What controls did you have in place? How were you guys operating before this happened?
Right. And that's a good question, because I'll say we weren't at ground zero. We did do things because of the nature of our business to try to protect ourselves. So we have about 25 people in the organization, and we're not the kind of organization where everybody has admin access. We've got our Office 365 for Microsoft. We've got an Azure cloud subscription, which handles a lot of the workload. Very, very limited people have administrator access to either of those two platforms. Moreover, we go through, we've got like a training platform. So all employees, when they're onboarded, go through a standard bank of, typical, what is cybersecurity? What is PII? Human engineering. Plus, we've got like refresher classes and things that are due there. Things that happen there. We also have like random phishing attacks. So we'll phish people's emails and see if they actually go into it. So I thought we were doing okay. And in the grand scheme of things, we were not doing bad. Those are all good things. But you can get lulled into a false sense of security, because the thing is, you don't know what you don't know. And it was the day the birds stopped singing when we found out, oh, here's something we didn't know about. And by that point, it's already too late. You're in kind of like a damage control mode at that point in time. So so that's kind of a lay of the land of what it was the day before going into the day of.
And David, we do talk to a lot of organizations of your size and thereabouts, and I have to say, knowing this situation, before and during, you were doing a lot of the right stuff. You were doing, frankly, more than I think a lot of organizations we talk to. Bob, maybe you can lead something to that. You are intimately involved with so many organizations around what they're doing before we start talking to them about cybersecurity. Talk a little bit about where you saw David's organization and all the stuff that was going right, and then maybe where some of the turn point could have been on the things that a lot of organizations go, oh yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, I think specifically around email, and I think for most folks that's probably Microsoft 365. There are some tools that are built into Microsoft with respect to spam protection. Are they great tools? Their baseline tools are average. I think there are better tools out there that are capable of, let's say, sniffing out problems before they occur or as they're trying to enter somebody's environment. You know, these things that are called ATP, Advanced Threat Protection, where you're scanning and not just scanning at the edge, but you're sending them to data centers where they're, you know, really looking hard to see what attachments look like and links look like. I think those are important things that people should think about doing in advance. And I think a lot of folks look at antivirus as a way, anti-spam protection as a way to protect. But I think there's a lot more once you get to monitoring. I think, you know, real-time monitoring of what's going on activity-wise. I think that's an important thing to look at. And really effective spam prevention, not your, you know, this isn't your father's Oldsmobile sort of thing. We're talking about, you know, hardcore spam protection, which is going to try to keep links that are attractive from entering an environment. And, you know, I'm sure we're going to talk essentially at length about multi-factor authentication and how to deal with keeping the hackers at bay. And multi-factor, when you're using a cell phone in conjunction with your login, is certainly one of the best ways. I think that's a key component. People get annoyed by it and have a tendency to turn it off. We've seen it with other clients, and that's how they've been breached. You know, that's one of the key items I think that has to be looked at and considered.
Thanks, Bob. And you know, you mentioned multi-factor, and anybody who's ever heard me do a webinar or a sales presentation, the thing I leave everybody with is multi-factor everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. Just turn it on if you have the option. Get over it. It's not that annoying. It's maybe painful the first 3 times, and after that, it just becomes habit. David, in your case, you actually had multi-factor turned on as well. Did you not?
We did. We had taken the step of putting that in place a few months before. But this just goes to what I was saying before. Whenever you always find out the holes you have. So we did, during the process, our kind of cleanup process afterwards, we noticed a couple of holes, but the big hole for us was a mailbox on our 365 that didn't belong to anyone per se. It's not one of the employees. It's one of those typical, we email out of it, do not reply as part of our, you know, some of our systems that we've built up. And so that was, you know, nobody owned it. So nobody had a phone connected to it for the multi-factor. And that was their entry point into our system. So yes, live and learn.
Yeah, well, and that goes to my point, I think, about it doesn't have to be just the controller's mailbox that gets compromised for it to be a problem. Yeah. In this particular case, they just found a way in. And then once they found a way in, then they found a way to escalate their privilege to be able to cause more damage. So, Fred, I know you've done a lot of research in different types of business email compromises, attacks that you've seen in the world. David just mentioned one threat vector that was able to be the access point in his world. What other types of ones have you seen where there was something that, even if maybe they were doing some of the right stuff, they still got in, or a common way that you're seeing folks get into organizations' email accounts?
Sure. So one that comes to mind that I've researched quite a bit involved a whole team of hackers actually going after this business. And one hacker spoofed the email of the CEO, and he made a small modification to the from address. So it wasn't from, he didn't use exactly the same name, but he used a slightly modified name. And he said he used an email address like Project 509 Hot Project, and he put that in the body of the email. The victim was the controller of the company, as Mike said. You know, it's often a person who has financial access in the company, and so the controller read the email, and then there was a whole other kind of psychological part of this thing where also the company lawyer also sent the controller some more information. Here's where to transfer the funds. There were multiple emails from the spoofed CEO. So it's really, and both of these emails were fake. The lawyer's email, instead, he was a Big Four accountant, maybe KPMG. So instead of using kpmg.com, the from address was kpmg-office.com or something like that, something really close to the real email. And unfortunately, the controller saw this. So it's not just the technology either. It's also the social aspects of this. You're getting something from the CEO. And then not only that, the email said, we've got a deadline. We have to transfer this money out to this other bank because of this acquisition that we're doing. So the hackers use technology, as David was mentioning, and they also use social and psychological aspects to trick people. And you think you wouldn't be a victim of this, but another statistic I saw is I think there's something like 17,000 people in the US or companies that were victims of business email compromise last year. So it's more common than you think. It's not just $1 million transfers that are out there.
Sure. And it's interesting you mentioned the wire transfer stuff, because that's certainly a big piece of it. David, in your case, this was not about financial transactions, right? They were looking for data.
No, actually, it started that nobody actually acquired, to the best of our knowledge, any data. Now, I don't know what they were thinking when they first came into us. Maybe they thought they would find troves of data. Luckily for us, our Office 365 and our Azure, where we keep are totally different domains. And so that actually worked in our advantage. But what they wound up doing was socially engineering for fraud. They tried to attack a couple of our internal folks. They basically, by looking at everybody, they zeroed in on me, our CFO, and our network administrator to try to send messages, but none of us fell for it. And that's kind of when things started to seem a little wrong. But what they had done, which we didn't notice because it was a sent mail that they sent from our CFO to one of our customers, when they saw an email about an invoice, they kind of jumped in there, just like you were talking about when you were going through your presentation, Mike, and said, here's our new banking information. And then that caused a whole bunch of things. So they tried us internally, that didn't work, but then they went outside, posing as us. And unfortunately that didn't work.
And what was your first indication that something was awry? When the bird stopped singing, what was it that was the trigger that said, uh-oh, we got to do something now?
We had seen a couple of suspicious things over the course of a couple of weeks, but we couldn't quite put our finger on it. The two things that happened at the end that really said, oh, something absolutely has happened, was the one I just mentioned, where somebody had inserted a message to a customer, say, here's a new banking detail. And our CFO, by talking to the customer, said, we've got these unpaid invoices. And they were like, we paid these. And then that's when that kind of unraveled. And that was, I think, even the same day. This is one of the internal social engineerings that they tried that did not work. Somebody was posing as our network admin, sending me messages. First via email, hey, Microsoft needs our new credit card information. Here's a form to fill out. And, I kind of like it working. I'm like, that doesn't look quite right, but I'll deal with it a little later on. But then on Teams that day, they were actually sending IM messages to me. And my network administrator called like 10 minutes later, said, this isn't me that's sending you these messages. I'm like, I know. And I think I was on the phone with you the next day, Mike. But yeah, that's when it kind of came to the forefront. It's like we actually knew, because people were saying these are messages and we knew these were not our messages. So
there's one thing I wanted to add to this, Mike. The interesting part, during Mike's kickoff to this presentation, he specifically talked about creating forwarding rules so that obviously the whoever the bad actor is trying to monitor traffic and messaging and all those things. The other thing that they typically do is, in order to cover their tracks, is they're setting up rules to automatically delete messages that are being created. So they're creating messages, one of those mailboxes that Dave was just talking about, that isn't a typical used conduit for messages. And they're sending out messages on behalf of that party, but every time they send it, it's automatically deleting from the sent box. Then it's emptying that message out of the delete box. So they're trying to cover their trail and the path behind them as best as possible. So you can't really do the research and track them down. And to Dave's point, I think, they tracked them down a different way. They got on the phone and they're starting to talk to customers and vendors and try to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah, that's good. And the interesting part, Dave, you talked about the controls you had in place before you started, and one of them was the social engineering, phishing emails, et cetera. It actually sounds like that worked, right? I mean, because you guys were, it smelled funny, and you said, wait a minute, something's not right about this. Bob, I know you do a lot of this stuff with our clients. What types of realistic social engineering, phishing campaigns and things are you launching to try to help make people understand, it's not just the really obvious, reply email anymore. Like it used to be, look at the email that it's sent from, because it's usually, 17 digits -online, something or other. They don't do any of that anymore. What kinds of things are you having people watch out for when you're doing the phishing stuff?
I think the most pertinent stuff that we're, I don't want to say we're trying to catch people in, but make it as realistic as possible is put it in perspective of what's going on. We are almost every time we're doing a campaign, we're thinking about exactly what's happening in the world. There's tons of them out around COVID, but that's now past a year. There were plenty hovering around March Madness. That's a common one. So to keep people's frame of reference on exactly what's going on, it's much better to pull from a pool of different types of email messaging with these phishing campaigns. We want to make sure not everybody is getting the same one. That's critical. We want to spread them out over time, 3, 4, 5 days, and random times and random messages. Well, we do a bunch around end of year with holiday stuff. There's always, we got UPS shipping, FedEx shipping, all kinds of tracking things, gift cards. All of those are what I would say commonplace, but I can tell you, we have a client that got caught by it. And I think one of the things that we talked about earlier is this whole deadline thing. I need to have this information now. I need these 10 gift cards, $100 each for our sales staff for a bonus. Those are triggers when you start to see urgent and deadlines, because that preys on somebody and the psychology of this whole thing, which is what Fred was talking about. I think those are the typical things that we want to get across to people when we're sending these test messages out.
Great. And to correlate on that, there was a question that came in from the audience around phishing emails. And the question is, it seems that my company is getting more and more phishing emails every day. Are there any tech solutions that can prevent these, or is training the only solution? You want to speak a little to that, Bob, when you're on that?
I don't think that it's a foregone conclusion that we're never going to stop this. I think if you have to look at the filters, or have somebody in the organization or a company that you're engaged with, look at the filtering mechanism to make sure that they're trying to their best to be able to stop these. And sometimes you got to tighten them up. And I know this is it's a tug of war, between I want to let the message through because I think it's legitimate, but I'm not so sure it's legitimate, so let's tighten it up. And now legitimate messages get blocked. It's having your email set up properly. You've got SPF records, DKIM records, DMARC set up, all of the functions that make sending and receiving messages as legitimate as you possibly can. I think that's it's an overlooked thing. People, I just set up email. I do this little pointer thing, this mail exchange record, and I'm done. That's it. I don't need to do anymore. Oh yeah, I got a little spam protection in. But I think if you shortcut these other pieces, that's where that's how stuff is going to slip through. We're a Barracuda team. We've been with Barracuda for our spam prevention for years. They've got this advanced threat protection where it's looking for links, it's looking for attachments, and it's got a sandbox to test them in. That is advanced protection, as opposed to is the filter tight enough or loose enough? I think those are the things that will try to keep the phishing at bay.
Right. So moving back into the business email compromise space, David indicated that, all right, as soon as he smelled something funny, he called up actually Lynn, our CEO, and said, Lynn, I'm pretty sure your company does something about this kind of stuff. Please help. David and I had a conversation quickly afterwards, but Fred, maybe you can share with us the things that you've seen in any of the studies that you've gone through, the cases you've looked at. What's the first thing that a lot of people do after discovering that they've had some sort of email hack or a breach? Any things that you've discovered there, common trends?
Well, that's so one of the risky things is that emails is a sort of a vector for many different kinds of attacks, right? So it's facing obviously the internet. So anybody can send you an email, and people are doing this, on a constant basis. So you don't necessarily know. One of the challenges is, how do you know whether you have an email hack or not? So in my campus, I get emails from people at Quinnipiac, and realistically, I don't know, did somebody actually send me a real email with a fake link in it? Is it a spoof? Did somebody hack that person's account? And of course, then there are the phishing emails that come from the outside. So it's very hard to figure out if there is an attack. But once that's been identified, if I see something that looks suspicious to me, in my case, we have a security officer. I can send it to him. I can say, what do you think? In David's case, he contacted Kyber. So you should have an incident response plan, however formal or informal you're going to have. If you see something that looks suspicious, I call that a security event. A security incident is when something bad really happens. You don't want to get to a security incident. So if you have a security event, you need to train people as to what they're going to do. So if it's a suspicious email, don't save it, don't open it, contact whoever is your security administrator or your third-party outsourcer. And then if you do accidentally click on something on your machine, and you see some sort of evidence of malware, then you need to disconnect your machine. So basically quarantine it and take it off the network. So it depends on what kind of incident you see, but the best practice would be to have a written incident response plan, even if it's just one page. It doesn't have to be a 50-page document. I always believe in keeping these kind of security policies and procedures really simple so people can understand them. So I think that's like the first best practice thing that I would recommend.
That's fantastic. And yeah, it's sort of the ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure. Like, you don't want to figure out how you're going to put out a fire once the fire has started, right? Yeah. You want to figure out ahead of time, what am I going to do in the event there's a fire? And this is that's a great piece of advice. Thank you. So David, moving back into your scenario a little bit, maybe you could describe, I'm feeding this a little bit because you had a particularly interesting case, I think, around the concerns you had around communication between your organization, throughout your organization. Talk a little bit about the challenges and how that affected the productivity of the organization, for how long, that type of thing over the course of the type of the event.
Right. Yeah. So we did do, we communicated internally first, saying if you see messages from, me, Phyllis, or Andre, our network admin, be suspicious. And we actually moved some conversations temporarily out of Office 365. So it was like, we had set up, we implemented text message chains where when we were like going to log everybody out and change passwords, which we did several times over the course of days, I would, texted my group, which is my project managers, who each had their own groups, and we would kind of flow down. This way we could kind of, get to everybody. So we were doing things like that. I think that had some adverse impact on the teams, kind of cutting off one ways in which they were communicating. But I don't think it didn't impact our day-to-day so much in terms of the teams we have delivering, because of the level it was at. But for me and my admin and my CFO, that was, a week of lost, that's a lost week, where it was just, on the phone with folks saying, all right, we're doing this now. I got to communicate this over here. Phyllis, you have to contact the clients over here. And we had to send out emails to the clients externally as well, saying, we're having an event, possibly an incident, look for messages from us, with suspicion, especially if they come from here, and we'll keep you apprised. So it was a lot of things to do, to manage through that.
And you sent that message out to your clients as well as your, yes.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah.
You had to sort of expose yourself a little bit at that point and say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, something's happening, but we're handling it, but
Right.
we got arms around it and your stuff's okay. But
Right.
so, often overlooked cost in this type of scenario is the reputation challenges that can come around all that. And I think you handled it very well. In your case, in a lot of cases, people will try to, slough it under the rug and not say anything about it. And you see that in some of the big ones where it's like, oh, Microsoft was hacked, 6 months ago and they never told you about it, never. You guys were upfront about it and it seemed to work very well for you. And ultimately, none of your clients' data was compromised. Did you see any other lashback?
No, we had a couple of, most clients didn't respond to the email. And some did write back, oh, hope it works out, keep me apprised. A couple, probably did what they all should have done, but I think only a couple did it, where they forwarded to their internal security experts. I did have a couple of people call me, and I had a couple of people that joked about it, sent me a message saying, oh, I wired you money or something like that. I'm like, very funny. I'm like, but again, it's like,
that joke.
That's right. So, but that you have to, I think you've got to be that transparent, especially being a small business. And most of my customers are larger businesses, some of the ones that sweep it under the rug, because I know my contractual language, and they don't expect me never to get hacked, but I'm supposed to be transparent when something happens. And I think if it came out afterwards or something really bad happened and I never knew it, then I would be on the hook.
Yeah.
And so I think the transparency, as uncomfortable as it is the only way to actually handle it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, and again, it's at the end of the day, you got to be able to look yourself in the mirror, right? And look your clients in the face and say, hey, it happened, but we handled it, and we talked about it as openly as we could. So
yeah, you got to get out in front of it.
Yeah,
right.
So now we're in the attack. And I'm going to go to Bob for some of the detail around this, but pretty much instantly after you contacted us, and when I say instantly, I mean we were engaged within a couple of hours in trying to contain and resolve and remediate this thing. Bob, maybe you can share some details about the methodology we use, the tools we deployed to try to help contain this thing. And David had mentioned, it was several times of, logging out and resetting passwords, because it's not as simple as, flip the switch and throw the guy out and then he's gone.
Yeah. So a couple of things as Dave was talking that I was thinking about, and, I think one of the things that was really key in his response is stop using email, or stop making it at least the primary method of communication. Start picking up the phone, start creating text groups and text messaging. I mean, even if we got to go to analog fax, those things, albeit, it may sound crazy, but if they are point-to-point communications that typically are either impossible or very difficult to intercept, I think those are the methods that you want to use in order to get your feet back under you and make sure that you've got some confidence that you're talking to who you want to be talking to, and you're giving instruction that's appropriate for those folks. I think that's a baseline, and I think that's one thing that Dave and his team really did absolutely right by. Some of the other things that we think about are, kind of the groundwork we started talking about at the beginning, is having tools in place that can catch oddities, these anomalous behaviors. So we've got, we use a group called Perch, and that those folks have 24/7, 365 monitoring happening out of a security operations center. That center is getting fed data real time every minute of every day they're looking for thousands of types of compromise, not just the forwarding and auto deletion rules, but hey, look at that, a new account was created. Oh, this person's account, their privilege was elevated. Huh, that's kind of odd. Well, that's never happened with that account or that level of account. Immediate alert, immediate tickets created. Those types of things. MFA was turned off. We've got somebody that logged in this morning from Connecticut. Geez, they logged in an hour later from California. It's possible with VPN and other tools, unlikely at best. And especially when you start taking that outside the country. Really, they logged in from Afghanistan? I'm not so sure that happened or it was legitimate. So I think being able to catch those things as they're happening and not have to go through the angst of wondering how long have they been in the system. There's statistics about this stuff that people are in your system 6 months before you find that they're in your system. That's not a crazy, the number is 187 days. It sounds crazy, but that's, they are in there if they can get in looking, and that's what they're after. I think all the stuff that Mike talked about to kick this meeting off, they're doing research. I mean, it's hardcore research on messaging to try to figure out who in your organization is communicating with whom and what the content of that messaging is. So I think monitoring and making sure that, I think to one of Dave's points, making sure that very few people have access to that O365 admin portal. That should be a very, very small list. And even in some circumstances, we've got people that have 2 different accounts for the same person. They've got a quote unquote regular account and they've got a privileged user account that is only used, when it's absolutely necessary. Okay, I need to go into the admin portal. That's a different account I use just for that. It's not my everyday account. I think that's a really great habit to get into. Does that cover some of the stuff you wanted to talk about, Mike?
Yeah, and some of the steps, I'll just share some of the details that I knew around the real integration. We deployed those tools that Bob was describing because that's going to show us other stuff going on. Immediately forced log out of all accounts, and you do that from the portal. Don't just tell people to log off their email because they can be logged in another place. So force log off of all accounts. Change everyone's passwords. Do not communicate those passwords or send reset links via email because the email could still wind up being forwarded to the wrong places. Scrubbing accounts for forwarding rules to make sure that the email is no longer leaving the system. And reviewing all of the privileges for all of the accounts that were out there to make sure that some other account that didn't used to be administrative is now administrative and can get themselves back in as soon as we're done.
I think looking at every rule. Yeah, I think every rule in every mailbox is a potential pitfall.
So it was a real detailed evaluation of all that, and then continued monitoring of all of those 100,000 indicators of compromise after we do all that and say, did we get them out? Because sometimes it's hard to tell, right? Depending on how long they've been in the system, how deep they got in the system. To David's great advantage, his Azure hosted data was separate than his Office 365, because if they could have traversed between those two, it would have been an even larger challenge for us to determine how deep they were and where they got to. There is a saying, sorry you have to hear this, David, but once hacked, always hacked. And you can do a lot of work to clean it out, but you want to continue to watch it to make sure that they didn't just quiet down and then wait and then say, okay, once they're done looking at the problem, we're going to just jump back up and do it again before they're not going to know we're still in there. So that continued monitoring of all of the activity is really key to make sure that once you've gotten them out, you've gotten them out successfully and as completely as you can ensure. Maybe what I'd like to, we're getting a little close on the end of time, but go to each one of you and say and ask, what can other organizations learn from this story, from other stories about business email compromise? if, you know, and one good takeaway anybody should take back with them that they can use as a valuable piece of information for their own use after this session's over. And Fred, why don't we start with you? You're muted.
I'm muted because there was a fire engine here. So anyway, I forgot to unmute. There's so many takeaways. So one is, as part of your incident response process, make sure you have sort of a lessons learned program. What did we get out of this and what are we going to do to improve? I think the key to security is everybody's going to have some controls, but are you continuously improving them year over year or month over month? If you're doing that, I think you have a good shot at being secure. And I think the stories that you hear from pen testers, they'll do a pen test, they break into a company, they come back the next year, they find the same vulnerability, they broke in again, you know, they get really frustrated with it. So I think it's really following up on any incident and figuring out, okay, in David's case, there was an extra email address that was not used by anybody. Sort of try to go one step before that. How did that get in there? Is there any way similar things can get in other parts of the company? So I like to emphasize the root cause and lessons learned, you know, and sort of continuous improvement of security. So.
Okay. David, what's your big takeaway after this very not stressful situation for you?
Yeah, this webinar hasn't been stressful at all. It's just reliving. I will come at this from like the business owner standpoint, because Bob and Fred are you know, way more experienced than this. I had a baptism by fire, but as the owner, I don't know who our attendees are here. If you happen to be the network administrator or the owner of your, you know, of your business, but the one thing I can say is that the whole conversation around security is not just for the owner or the administrator. It's not a single person that's responsible. You know, you can put technology in place and be monitoring for people logging in from California and Connecticut, and you can do all that sort of stuff. But if the people don't know what they should be looking for and don't know what to do afterwards, which is kind of like what Fred was talking about with you know, an incident policy, then you really are you know, cutting yourselves really, you know, really short. It's not a tech-based solution as much as it's a people solution. So you got to loop everybody in your company into this conversation and have it very frequently. I think that's that could have been a lot worse for us if we hadn't done some of the things we had been doing.
Yeah, agreed. Making security, you know, the conversation part of the culture.
It's got to be, yep, right. It's got to be right here for everybody, right in the front of their brains. Yeah.
For sure. Bob?
I think I'm going to go back to, you know, some of the tools that really help us either ward the bad guys off or, you know, or catch them in the act and really stifle them. You know, real-time monitoring, absolutely critical. You know, everybody's got some flavor of multi-factor available that's got to be enabled. It's, I mean, that should be second sense at this point. It's something we do every single day, and Mike, you know, alluded to it before. Yeah, it might seem like an annoyance at first. I think you get used to it very, very quickly, and it just works. And I think, you know, this seems rudimentary. Got to have backup. You know, you may think that Microsoft and Google back up your mail. They absolutely do not. Their responsibility is keep the system running, have their data centers up and running, and have mail flow. Your database of email gets corrupt, your stuff gets deleted, any bad thing that could possibly, you delete stuff by mistake. You've got, 30 days to recover it out of your deleted. If it's gone from there, it's gone. So having an alternative location that's got a picture, a backup of that, I think is a great safety net.
Can I jump in on something Bob said? So.
Sure.
Just now, no, I think this is such a good point. Understanding what the limitations and benefits of the technology are, and don't just sort of get lulled into, oh, hey, everything's protected. So,
yeah, it's Microsoft. They must back it up.
So, you know, for me, as I hear all of the conversation we had today, looking back, we talked about employee awareness training, social engineering testing. We talked about multi-factor. We talked about spam filtering. We talked about backup. We talked about monitoring tools. Ultimately, there is no single solution that's going to solve the world's problems with cyber attacks. And that's why you really need to utilize a defense in depth methodology, which has multiple layers, helping you make it a challenge for a hacker to get into your organization. And, you know, when we look at a small, medium-sized organization, we say, look, if we can make it annoying enough for the hacker to move on to the next guy, we did our job. We can't make you 100% not hackable. But if we can make it tough enough with a defense in depth methodology like we've all described here today, then they'll move on to somebody else where the juice is worth the squeeze. They're going to go further and try to find some low-hanging fruit. So I need to hand back over to Amber. I don't know if there were other questions that didn't get answered, but if there are, we will get back to them and get back to everybody. I know she's got a couple of administrative things to cover. Before I stop yapping, I just want to thank Bob and Fred and David for your time and your knowledge and your input today. This is a great conversation, and I could have gone another hour with it. So sorry that it's over, but we'll have to talk more again soon. Thank you.
Yeah,
Amber?
I do all the marketing, and I was super intrigued in this whole thing. So I hope everyone on this call has really gotten good information from this. I have two things that I want to do before we're going to collect some questions. The first is that we have a special offer for any attendees for today. Or if you have registered and you're watching this later today because you couldn't come live, then that's okay too. We're going to do an email security assessment. It's just a short assessment, but what you'll get is a one-on-one session with either Mike or Bob, I'm not sure who yet. And from that, we'll give you a remediation gap analysis report. So we'll talk all about where the holes in your email security are. And so it kind of wraps everything together that all of our panelists were talking about today, and how you can enhance your email security to prevent a business email compromise attack. And the second thing I wanted to review, and if you are interested in this right now, send a little thing in the chat like email offer or special offer, and I'll contact you after this. If not, I'll also send in a follow-up email. You can just respond to me there as well. So there's all sorts of ways you can get in touch with me. And the moment that everyone's waiting for, if I can get this to win. So the threat bracket winner, and I almost wish that I covered this earlier so that you guys can touch upon this greater, is the winner of the threat bracket was compromised credentials on the dark web, which I was a little surprised about because I think, particularly for me, malware downloads from phishing emails or hacked websites is pretty prominent of what I've seen. But this is pretty cool that a lot of people thought the external threat was greater, the compromised credentials on the dark web. And with that, I will pick our winner for the Amazon gift card so you can get your Star Wars stuff. Just kidding, you can get whatever you want with the gift card. I don't think he's here. Hold on. All right. I'm going to do first name and last initial. So Isaiah C., you are our winner for today. And I know you had a few in here from your previous email entries too. So good job. And I will also contact you after as well. But if you have any questions, you can throw them in. There's the Q&A, there's the chat, or you can email me. My email's right up there. And if you have specific questions for any of our panelists as well, we did post their email earlier. But if you missed that, you can send your questions to me and I'll field them over to who you're specifically looking for. And let me open the chat right now.
Before you sign off, in honor of the winner of the threat bracket, since that happened to be dark web compromised credentials, in addition to the business email compromise or the email security questionnaire, we can offer a free dark web scan to see if any of your credentials are out there currently for sale. If anybody's interested in that, let Amber know and she can run those scans to see if you have anything currently for sale on the dark web for your organization's domain name.
That was a good catch. If most of you are concerned about the dark web credentials, that's a good offer. We'll give the dark web scan for you. We do have a few questions rolling in. Mike, do you want me to say them or do you want to field them?
What do you got? Is it something we can answer in 30 seconds? Otherwise,
you mentioned, yeah, I'm gonna grab one of these. So this, I think, is going off of something that you guys talked about earlier. It says, you mentioned productivity being affected during an event, but will enhanced email security solutions impact my employees' productivity after installing them?
I get this question a lot when I'm talking to people about all these layers of defense we're going to put in between them and the world. And the reality is the first 30 days, there's a little bit of pain in tweaking systems and making sure that all the right stuff is getting through, learning how to use Multifactor. Frankly, after a month, you don't think about it anymore. It just becomes part of how people operate. And I would say that, I have not heard long-term any productivity challenges, but completely honestly, yes, in the first 30 days, there's a little bit of a learning curve. People don't like change and it's something new, but they get used to it.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with that, Mike. I think, I think the initial reaction is to put up a wall and say, oh, this is going to be painful. And then once you see the impact, there was a question out there about, the volume of phishing attempts and spam. Once you don't have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis, you realize just how valuable your time is and how much you've recouped it and how little pain you've had to endure just to get to that point. I think that's important to know.
And I can also give like an end user kind of point of view here. I don't feel like it's affected my productivity. Obviously, coming into this organization, I didn't have any cybersecurity training, which is pretty bad because I've come from SMBs. So coming into this organization, I've learned so much about what to do with MFA, how to field the phishing attacks that we've talked about. So I don't think that if anything, it helps productivity because it's fielding the way that you're thinking about security. And David kind of touched upon that earlier too, just to give my 2 cents in there.
It's super simple after a while, right? You totally do get used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, we should probably wrap up. If there are other questions, Amber or I will follow up with you and make sure that you get answers. Again, thank you, David and Bob and Fred, for spending the time today to have this conversation. I enjoyed it. I hope everyone else did too.
That was great.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. You all did great.
Right.
Thanks.